Episode 2 Solid Quake. Act 1 The Cousins Campbell. Someone's stealing S.H.I.E.L.D. weaponry. You need to find someone who can do something about this, a voice says through a phone. Daisy Johnson sits at her laptop, in a dark room, a cup of tea sitting next to her. She clicks through her computer, accessing the database for S.H.I.E.L.D. and seeing groups of agent files. She remembers all the names, even those that aren't alive anymore. Specifically one, the one being Lincoln Campbell's. Not long after Lincoln's death, Daisy downloaded a copy of the file onto her personal computer, naming it Sparkplug. She never really understood why she did it, but regardless, she was glad she did. She clicks on the file and it opens up. She sees all of Lincoln's information, stuff she already knew, his birthday, his height, but there was one thing that she somehow never noticed, a name at the bottom of the screen, where notable relatives are. Connor Campbell, she reads aloud. Link never mentioned him, she adds. From the other end of the phone, a voice replies, I know the name, before suddenly Daisy's phone vibrates. She shifts her eyes away and sees that a picture was sent to her. She unlocks her phone and looks down at the image, seeing a picture of Connor. To Daisy, it's almost like she's looking at Lincoln, and she snapped out of the almost trance-like state she's in after hearing everyone calls him the Northeast Soldier, is what the voice says. Okay, so what, should we choose him? Daisy asks, trying to compartmentalize her memories and feelings. Well, he's got an impressive list of exploits. He killed Diamondback a while ago, the voice says. Daisy nods at hearing this and continues to type on her keyboard, her eyes focused on the screen as she tries to find more info about Connor. Yeah, I heard about it on the news. Revenge killing, wasn't it? She asks. Seemed like it, the voice replies. Daisy looks around at her screen before suddenly the voice tells her that he found Connor's phone number. Call him, set up a meeting, the voice says. Daisy confusedly looks over at her phone after hearing this. It's 1 in the morning, Daisy says. Yeah, and we're still awake. What's your point? The voice asks. Daisy pinches the bridge of her nose and tells him that Connor isn't going to answer, let alone meet up with her at that time of night. Act 2 Circumstances. Connor Campbell sleeps in his bed semi-peacefully. His phone begins to vibrate, and at first he doesn't hear it. But eventually the sound begins to become apparent, and he slowly looks over at his phone, half awake. Hello, he says, his voice rough and laced with exhaustion. Hello, Connor, Daisy says, her tone almost flat. Connor is confused, however he asks who she is. Daisy sighs and softly says, Call me Sky. She hasn't used that nickname in years, but something about the situation made it feel right for her to use it again. Connor hears this as he begins to fully wake up. He slowly rolls over, while still holding the phone into his ear. Okay, and what do you need? He asks. Daisy smiles slightly, realizing that this may actually work. I don't need anything. S.H.I.E.L.D. needs you, she says sternly. Connor's eyes widen at this. He knew that S.H.I.E.L.D. managed to reform after Hydra's takedown by Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, and Sam Wilson. Lance had told Connor all the stories that Nat and Sam had told him, but he didn't think that S.H.I.E.L.D. would need an external hero's help again. S.H.I.E.L.D.? Connor asks. His mind darts to Lincoln, and Daisy confirms her words, before explaining to him that they need to meet, and talk more about this. Connor feels a weird vibe, despite not knowing her. He feels as if he can trust her. Where and when? He asks. About an hour later, he arrives at the meeting point in Staten Island. Other than a few people out on late night walks, he's alone. Connor stands with his hands in his pockets, waiting. His eyes shift around at the dark surroundings. Hey, he hears a familiar voice say from behind. Connor turns his head and looks behind him, seeing a woman slowly striding toward him. Connor's face becomes confused, and he cautiously moves closer. Are you Sky? He asks. What's it to you? Daisy asks with a smirk. Connor shrugs and says, You look familiar. If you are who I think you are, then you're the lady my cousin can never stop talking about. Connor says. Daisy verbally pauses as she moves closer to Connor. Link told you about me? She asks. Yep, all the time. He mentioned you having long hair. Connor says as he alludes to her shorter haircut. Daisy nods. Yeah, cut it a while back, but sometimes I think about growing it out again, she says. Connor sits down on the bench he stood in front of, a saddened expression taking over his face. Daisy remains standing, and looks down at Connor with a puzzled face. You good? She asks. Yeah, it's just I haven't thought about Lincoln in a while, not since my old police chief died. And now I'm remembering what it was like when I found out about his sacrifice. Connor tells her, as his eyes focus on the water in front of him. I get that. After Lincoln died, I felt angry. Went on a vengeance tour. I even had people questioning the effectiveness of the Sokovia Accords. And that was when Daisy Johnson became Quake. Daisy tells Connor. Connor nods and deeply exhales. So, S.H.I.E.L.D. needs my help. What is it? Connor says, dragging himself away from his painful memories. Yeah, someone's stealing S.H.I.E.L.D. tech. We need to find out who it is and how to stop them. Daisy tells Connor. Connor's face turns disappointed and he looks down at the ground before sighing and saying, I lost my suit. Daisy tilts her head slightly. The Northeast Soldier armor? Don't worry, she says while putting her hand on his shoulder. I can get you some new armor.